Hello everyone and welcome back to another Maidstone United review. This time we're talking league leaders Chesterfield. Of course, if you didn't see the game yesterday, then of course it was a fantastic effort from the Maidstone boys. Exactly the sort of performance that everybody wanted to see off the back of two or three pretty ropey games, stemming from that Gateshead away performance. But in the end, Maidstone did just fall short due to that league leading quality that Chesterfield do possess. That dying moment stuff that we saw so often last season carried us to a title victory is really what got Chesterfield over the line in this game. The quality of their players, their substitutions, it all just came to fruition in the last 10 minutes for them, and unfortunately we did lose out after probably our best performance of the season. Hakan Hayretin certainly seems to think so, as do many of the fan base, myself included. I was really impressed from what I saw yesterday. I thought we were quite unlucky to not even get a win in that game, let alone a draw. There was a few opportunities that we will talk about during this review, which of course could have been taken, but in the grand scheme of things, really happy with that performance. So let's get into it a little bit more and see how things fared for Maidstone in this game. So let's kick things off with the lineup. Of course, we're going chronological order, start from what happened before the game, and before the game we saw the return to the side for three players who have not featured for the odd game or two now. And of course we saw Tom Hadler return to the side, Maidstone's number one. An incredible amount of pressure on him ahead of this game. Yusuf Mersin, obviously the favoured goalkeeper for the whole season so far, 9 competitive games played, and it seems Tom Hadler has been given an opportunity to come back in against the league leaders. We're in a poor run of form, and that's an incredible amount of pressure to have on any position in the pitch, let alone goalkeeper. And of course, it was great to see him back. It really was great to see him back. We looked pretty good with him in goal. For me, not too much changed in terms of the direct change from the goalkeeper, but I think there were some secondary benefits which we'll get into when we start breaking down the game. But it was really good to see Tom back in the side. We also saw Joe Frualol come back in after missing the odd game or two out of the side. I think Gateshead might have been his last performance, not entirely sure. I think it was. I can't remember him playing against Maidstone. So yeah, I think it was that Gateshead game. So yeah, good to see him back in the side as well. We finally saw the back four or back five from last season as complete as it could have been, as similar to what it could have been last season. This season, for the first time really, Hadler back in net, Hoyt on the right, Fowler and Alol back in the middle, and of course new boy Ryan Galvin out on the left, just replacing on a short-term loan deal, of course, Jerome Binnon-Williams. But I mean, we really did benefit from that. Before the game, I saw that back five and thought, I think, we're really in for a chance today. If you watch my preview, I did, funnily enough, predict a 2-1 loss in the dying moments of the game. But unfortunately, for this defence, who had such a fantastic game, really kept them quiet for extensive periods, they did just lose out at the end. But that's a great foundation to go off. Really good building blocks for the coming weeks. So we'll see how that pans out. The midfield as well. We did see another big change in there as well. Of course, Corn and Booty were playing, very much the regulars in this side, but there has been some question marks over the third person in that midfield. We've seen Henry Woods play there, Don Wadasanya play there, Bivesh Garung play there, and something that did surprise me was Don Wadasanya coming back into the side. For me, looked pretty good. I was actually quite impressed. He was given a couple of different roles throughout the game, playing that sort of box-to-box midfield role down the middle sometimes, getting forward a little bit more, actually playing on the right of a 4-4-2, which again is something we'll get into. But yeah, he looked pretty good for me. A little bit rusty, which of course is going to be expected with a few games out, but I do think, again, there's something we can build on there in terms of Dom's inclusion in the side, so good signs there. And then we saw the same front three that we've seen for the majority of this season, Deacon Barham and Christy Patterson as well. So, there was a few question marks over the starting lineup for me. I was really happy with the return of a lot of the players just mentioned, but I was a little bit concerned over that front line. James Alabi was someone who I said in my preview I would like to see start. He just gives us that different dynamic, gives Chesterfield something else to think about. Maybe we'd see a 2 up front formation, something like that. Didn't quite work out like that before the game started, but talking about the game now, in general, I genuinely believe, trying to be quite impartial here, that Maidstone really had the better of the game. I think it was very close. I think it was maybe a 55-45 in Maidstone's favour, but I do feel like we were on top for more of the game. We had a lot more opportunities going forward, and maybe not as clear cut as Chesterfield, I'll give them that. But, for once, we actually saw this team on the front foot, shooting a lot more, which again is something that myself and a lot of fans were saying before this game. We do need to be getting these shots off, whether it's on the edge of the box, quite far outside the box. If something opens up, you think there's something on there. Coughlin has had games this season where he's made a couple of mistakes coming out or something like that, giving the ball away unnecessarily. So if we could take advantage of that, or maybe hit a couple of early shots, then we could get something from the game. We did nearly see it. A couple of times. Coughlin with a couple poor bits of distribution. Another time Jack Barham did get in one-on-one with him, managed to get round him, but unfortunately the extra touch to come back inside round the goalkeeper just wasn't enough, and it did go back to a Chesterfield defender. So, overall really impressed actually. Jack Barham a lot more involved today, which was something we haven't seen so much in recent weeks, which is obviously a good sign. We can see him finally starting to get involved in games a little bit more. For me, Deacon and Christy Patterson, a little bit off the pace, just a touch. I think Christy had a couple of good opportunities. We probably could have seen a couple of times testing the goalkeeper a little bit better, in my opinion, from the both of them. But again, we're talking about these building blocks, these foundations. You look at games like Chesterfield beforehand and afterwards, and you're not exactly expecting a result against these teams. But if they can perform the way they did, of course, in this game against Boreham Wood next week, for example, then we could expect to see something a lot better in terms of a result. So overall in the game, I was really impressed. I was really impressed by the midfield battle. They didn't look out of place. They fought really well. Chesterfield have got a fantastic midfield side, really, really good. Oldacre, Banks, example, just a couple of the players who were in that midfield role for them yesterday. And, we didn't, as I say, look too out of place. We did switch the system quite a lot throughout the game as well. As I mentioned, that 4-4-2 earlier on, we did see sometimes Corn and Barham sort of playing a more advanced role, Patterson and Barham playing a bit more of an advanced role. We saw Donwell Asanya floating out to the right hand side quite often, Deacon sitting a little bit deeper on the left hand side, with like Booty and Corn sometimes in the middle. So really good to see us adapting the style of play throughout the game to help deal with different situations. I thought that worked really well for us. The two banks of four seemed a lot more efficient in terms of retaining possession, moving up the field, creating options a little bit more going forward as well. Was always really good to see, and we did come forward, as I said, quite a lot in this game versus Chesterfield. Something else I want to add as well is, of course, Maidstone's goal yesterday did come through James Alabi, and for me, in the maybe 10 to 15, maybe even 20 minutes in the build-up to Shamanga's goal against Maidstone, of course, I did say and hear as well from a lot of fans in the Genco stand that James Alabi should be coming on. We could kind of see the oncoming pressure from Chesterfield. They were really piling it on. We didn't really have a very successful outball in terms of alleviating the pressure. And for me and many others, James Alabi would have created that option. And of course, he did come on when it was 1-0, a little bit too late in a few people's opinions. But in the end, he did manage to score an absolutely fantastic goal. Props James Alabi. It's the second time he's been substituted on and scored this season. Of course, got us all 3 points versus Torquay. Should have got us a point in this game, unfortunately, but we just couldn't hold on at the end. So for me, I think James Alabi deserves a few more minutes, maybe even a start or two. So, it'll be very interesting to see how that works out in the coming week. So taking a little look at the things that we could have done in this game a little bit better. Something I did mention in the preview, for me at least, was going towards the end of the game has been a little bit of a characteristic of ours lately. I didn't go too much into it rather than explain it. I just kind of mentioned in the last video that we do just drop off a little bit towards the end of games this season. Of course, it's going to be a lot more intense than it was last year, so it is obviously going to happen when you're playing sides who have been doing this for years now. But for me, we get into these last few minutes or so, and I was actually talking to my dad about it and he did mention something which I thought was quite prevalent. And for me, it's sort of when we get into these dire moments of games, we do seem to lose command of our defensive third, especially when we're in and around the box. When we conceded that second goal yesterday, we actually had 8 outfield players in the box. I think it was 8, and then 9, of course, being Tom Hadley in there as well. And the last 5 yards, the edge 5 yards of the box, however you want to word it, weren't picked up by anybody. And for me, this is a bit of a lack of responsibility in terms of defending. When you've got so many people back, nobody's directly responsible for something going on, if that makes sense. If you've got a back 4, you can kind of instruct where everybody's going to be. But if you've got 8 people in the box, everybody makes the assumption that someone else is going to pick the space up. And we saw with the 2 banks of 4, 8 players there, of course, from the outfield positions, doing exceptionally well throughout the rest of the game. But as soon as we dropped back and was on the back foot in those dire moments, in and around the box, we had 8 people there. As I said, if you've got 8 people in one defensive line, there's no direct responsibility of people to be able to, say, right, well, it's your job to go out and pick up that man on the edge of the box or keep the edge of the box covered. Everybody was trying to pack in front of the goal. And I do think that if we maintain the back 4 defensively in and around the 6-yard box, as we did, defending the line, that sort of thing, closing down shots, and we had, the 2 holding midfielders, such maybe Booty and Corn, for example, covering that edge of the box, that goal probably wouldn't have happened yesterday. And of course we did need people back, I'm not saying that, but I'm just saying that perhaps the situational awareness could have been a little bit better. Of course, it was a bit panicky in terms of, dire minute of the game, the quality they possess. We've obviously got to be very careful, but for me, just a little bit of more prior planning, something I mentioned in the Bromley game as well, having a preemptive defensive mindset rather than a reactive one. Proactive versus reactive was something I used a lot in the last video as well. If we were just thinking about, right, okay, well, if they do manage to control that ball, what are their options? Okay, well, they could put it into the 6-yard box, right? Let's leave the defence there. They could pull it back to the edge, something that Maidstone do a lot. We know, of course, with Sam Corn, he is very successful in doing that, but we didn't quite clock that was an option for Chesterfield yesterday, and that did earn them the second goal through Oldacre. So besides that, nothing really to complain about. I can't really fault anybody individually in the team. I do think, as I said, that maybe the forward line could have been a little bit more clinical in terms of the chances that they got, but Chesterfield are a fantastic side. They don't, an opportunity might look quite clear cut, but when you've got the quality that Chesterfield have at the back, you're always going to be wary of oncoming defenders and goalkeepers. With the quality that Covenant does have. As I said, he's prone to mistakes every now and then, as we saw yesterday. We didn't capitalise on them, but I always said he was a great shot stopper, and being a good shot stopper, of course, is gonna save you goals in this division. So, really unfortunate overall from that game as well. Another thing I do want to just point out as well, bit of a downer here, but the officials as well just weren't good enough for me again yesterday. That's not a Maidstone bias either. I thought they were really poor for both sides. They gave away a lot of really soft things against and for Chesterfield, against and for Maidstone, of course, in the same sense. But, there was a lot of tomfoolery going on, a lot of play acting and things like that, which, from both sides as well. Personally, a little bit more from the Chesterfield side, but definitely from both sides. And the officials just fell for it quite a lot. It was quite disappointing to see, really. I did hear that it was the officials' maybe 5th or 6th game in the National League, something like that. So, of course, new to the division, but he did need the support of his, companions in his officiating team to kind of see out that game a little bit better for me. There was a few times kind of lost control of the tie. So, yeah, again, a little bit of sour grapes, I suppose, but I do just want to see the officiating be good for every team in this division. As I said, Chesterfield did not benefit from some of the decisions yesterday as well. So, overall, I just want to say that didn't impact the game in any way for me. It was just breaking it up quite a lot, which was a shame to see. It was such a good game. But yeah, aside from that, I think Maidstone did really, really well. Was very unlucky to concede the goals that we did concede, just that momentary lapse of concentration, especially for the first one, not picking up Kabongo Shamanga, probably the best striker in the division, although Langstaff may have something to say about that now, but certainly the best, if not up there last season. Had £1 million deal fall through in the last few weeks, moving up a few divisions, so we can't leave players like that with chances one-on-one. So yeah, again, just that last few minutes concentration is the only improvement I could really say to make. It will be interesting to see whether this period of time as well, we've started seeing players come back into the side. Lowell, Odesanya, Hadler come back in. Does this mean opportunities are now up for certain players? Does this mean the end for Yusuf Mersin? Does this spell the end for Cody Leons Foster or Jack Cooley? It's going to be interesting to see, will there be some incomings if these players are decided that they're no longer going to be in and around the squad. Again, like I say, it will be interesting to see. Of course, I'll bring you all the updates on that in the coming weeks, but thank you all for watching. Of course, unfortunately, we did not win this game, but I am a lot more hopeful now after this one. Going into Bournemouth at the weekend, I will be commentating that one. It will be on BT Sports as well, 5:20 kickoff. So do make sure, if you can't get down there, you are tuning in, supporting in one way or another, listening to me, watching BT Sports. All contributes, of course. So thank you again for watching, and I'll catch you all in the next one.